So that's how Lumos started, right? Where you said it was like this huge opportunity, and I said, okay, let's just do it. And so here we are.
Journey with us as we explore how Andrej Safundzic, a Stanford MBA dropout turned tech visionary, secured over $30 million from Anderson Horowitz to create Lumos, the first app store for companies. This groundbreaking platform, now pivotal for giants like GitHub and MongoDB, is setting a new standard for productivity and compliance. Get an inside look at the innovation reshaping how companies across access technology on Tech for Founder podcast. So, Andrew, from being awarded the prestigious Knight Hennessy Scholarship at Stanford to making the bold decision to drop out for Lumos, you've had an extraordinary journey. How did these experiences shape your vision for Lumos? How has the backing from Anderson Horowitz propelled this vision?
No, that's a great question. I think the most important thing in startups is what I call a screw it, just do it mentality, right? And usually creativity or like pioneering happens if you just say, hey, screw it, let's just try it out. And I always had the same philosophy. I feel as human beings, we are very risk averse. And because we are very risk averse, we sometimes don't go down the unbeaten path. And so whenever I make a decision, I try to add, at least for the big ones, I try to add 20, 30% more risk on top of it. Because I always believe that there's something more beautiful that kind of lies behind that risky path.
Yeah.
So that's how Lumos started, right? Where you said it was like this huge opportunity, and I said, okay, let's just do it. And so here we are.
I love that. I love that you talked about like this risky path because, I think all the best innovations get started from people who are willing to take the risk and like they see an opportunity like you did and you just went for it. And I love that.
Yeah.
So with top tier companies like GitHub and MongoDB leveraging Lumos, could you share a standout success story where Lumos significantly enhanced a company's productivity and compliance?
No, a good question. Basically, what Lumos is doing is we're the app store for companies. So what that basically means is we help companies manage all the applications, right? And there are multiple use cases for that. One use case is Cyclical Warrior is a good one. We came in there and saved 15% of the software budget. How? We found unused license. So we're basically like a subscription manager in this case. You know how you as a consumer have Netflix and Hulu and Disney Plus and all those subscriptions? For companies, that's just, the scale is just like 1,000x, right? It's like you use Notion and Asana and Airtable and Datadog, and you have 1,000 employees, right? So what we did for Cyclical Warrior is we found duplicate applications, Asana and Monday. We found unused licenses. And we made sure, and we found like also contracts that are not well negotiated. So we can tell people like, hey, you need to pay, you can pay, ask for a better price for this contract. And so that's how we save 15% of their software spend. Or for Chegg, what you can also do with Lumos is you can get access to software in Lumos. So you go to Lumos, to a Slack bot and say, I need access to AWS and I need this permission in AWS. So I need Zoom and I need Zoom Enterprise. And we automatically give you that access. And I think we automated 25% of all IT tickets at Chegg, which led to a ton of efficiency. So those are two examples of customer impact.
Absolutely. That's very impressive. So would you say that Lumos is more suitable for larger companies rather than like small startups?
Yeah, usually the companies that use Lumos are companies between 200 to 10,000 employees. The small startups usually do it manually and don't need us. Usually when scale happens, that's when Lumos becomes beneficial.
Absolutely. So your work speaks volume about your belief in technology as a force for good. How do you see Lumos contributing to this ideal, especially in making tech accessible and secure for everyone?
Yeah, good question. So there's a kind of a huge change happening right now. So the first change happened in the 2000s where everything moved to the cloud, right? Salesforce came out, Atlassian came out. And so we started moving everything to the cloud, right? AWS was founded like in the mid 2000s, right? Then as a next step in the 2010s, like 2010s, we got into consumerized apps, which is Figma and Zoom and Slack and all those kind of cool applications came out between 2010 and 2020. And it was all about collaboration. So it wasn't just like, hey, I'm putting this into the cloud. It's collaborative apps that you could sign up for with a swipe of a credit card. Swipe your credit card, you get access to it, right? Now we're getting into a new phase of technology with autonomous software. So basically what autonomous software is doing the work for us. And just think about Grammarly or GitHub Pilot. They're helping us do a better job, but slowly that just recently there was a new technology of a software engineer that
Yeah.
codes by itself, right? There's a ton of cool technology right now that's just like automated. Like it's similar to a manufacturing plant where first we created cars ourselves with like on the conveyor belt. Then suddenly we had like kind of machines that helped us. And now if you look into a Tesla factory, the robots are creating the cars themselves. And so basically what Lumos tries to do is Lumos tries to define the relationship between humans and applications, right? So we're the infrastructure for any type of application access. So what that basically means is if someone wants access to this application, whether it's a human or whether it's a machine, Lumos will manage that relationship. And most hacks usually happen when someone has access to something that they shouldn't. So for example, there was a recent hack at MGM. MGM is this big casino in Las Vegas. And basically someone got access to admin permissions of an employee. And so they shut down all slot machines for 3 days. And I think MGM lost $150 million in revenue. And so we are making sure that people only have the access that they need so that they can't take bad actions.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's quite simple when it's a small company, but when it's scaled up, like these things really need a better system for that because there's just so many people and has always happened when like people have access to things that they shouldn't have access to.
Exactly. You're totally right.
So every innovation faces a set of challenges. What were some of the pivotal challenges in creating Lumos and how did you navigate them?
So the hard part about Lumos is that we're building a very broad platform. Lumos manages apps from a spend perspective. Lumos manages apps from a security perspective. Lumos manages apps from an automation perspective. So we have a ton of modules on top of Lumos, right? So we call it like a platform approach or a product suite approach where we are consolidating usually solutions that you would buy individually into one platform. And so the hard part about that one is it's technologically very hard to execute on because you're already a small team and now you're building like 3-4 products and you say, how are you going to do that?
Yeah.
And I believe you can only pull this off if you have an A+ team, right? Because what you basically do is you build a platform. So think about this. Imagine there are 3 products, one that helps you get secure access into apps, one that helps you get fast access, and one that helps you manage your spend for those apps. Each of those apps need notifications, need integrations, need security features, need some workflow engine, right? And so basically what Lumos did is we platformized, we abstracted out those platform functionalities like notifications, etc., so that we have now just one platform that each product team can leverage. So instead of, let's say, for notifications, usually you would need to know how to use the Slack API for sending notifications or how to use the Gmail API for sending notifications. Now you have an abstracted version of that, right? Where the product engineer can just say send message, receive message. And that's all they need to know. They don't need to know the nitty-gritty details of the Slack API. They can just know the more abstract version of it and can build faster. So the biggest, back to your question, the hardest part was how do we build a platform that's broad but deep at the same time? And it's extremely hard to execute on. And our kind of approach to that is to build a kind of a strong platform on top of which our products can be built.
Definitely. I think that's a challenge that really requires a strong team to execute on.
Exactly. And the right architecture.
Definitely. Leaving Stanford MBA's program for Lumos is a testament to your commitment and vision. Can you talk about how this decision reflects on your personal growth and leadership style in the tech industry?
I think people are focused too much on accolades these days of the thing that you want to do, right? The thing that school wants to prepare you for is to build and create, right? And hopefully make a small dent in the world, right? And so once you find an opportunity like that, right? Why not start right away, right? Why not parachute in? Why wait, right? And maybe if you think about leadership style, it's about drive and bias towards action. is something that's really important. If you see an opportunity, you just like parachute in and just do it. And I think that can be reflected in Lumos as well. That's why we built so many products already. We're like a 3.5-year-old company and have already 4 products, right? And I think it aspires towards action to say, hey, screw it, just do it. Screw it, just do it. I think that probably can be translated to that action. Yeah.
I love that. I think what you said about too much emphasis on accolades is completely right. I think a lot of people, they try really hard. Like they have ideas, but then they really feel like, oh my God, like I got into this great university. I should at least graduate first. And by the time they want to take action, the market has changed and maybe like their fire has dialed down and they don't want to take the action anymore. And that's a shame.
And it doesn't even need to be university. It can be a cushy
Yeah.
job, it can be whatever it is. There's always this kind of voice in your head that says like, why not? Why shouldn't I? And I think we need to listen to this voice more often.
Definitely. So your academic achievements and roles reflect a deep engagement with technology and society. How have these experiences influenced your philosophy towards business and innovation?
So what I believe is my last company was in the government tech sector. We built technology for civil servants or for the government in Germany, at least. And so what I really believe that is important is like what we focus on right now is at Lumos is the IT persona, and the government we focused on the civil servant. All those kind of personas are usually personas that we don't talk about that often, that are often forgotten. If you think about a civil servant, you think it's a gray administrator in the DMV, right?
Yeah.
Or if you think about an IT person, you might think this is the person that kind of fixes my laptops, but that's actually not true in both, right? And so what I believe innovation is innovation takes a persona, right? And lets them go through their hero's journey, right? Innovation lets a persona reinvent and redefine themselves, right? Because if you think about the best books is never about the dragon. The best books is never about the environment. It's always about the person and how the person changes along the way. So as you build innovation, what is the person where you change their trajectory, right? Their career, their lives, whatever it is, right? And I think that's what I call story-led innovation. There needs to be a movement or movement-led innovation. There needs to be a movement around what you're building. My last company we believe the civil servant can be tech savvy and impactful beyond comparison. And so what is it that you're innovating for, where you're creating a movement, right? Who is the persona that you are like letting traverse through their hero's journey? That's my question.
Yeah, I really like that perspective because it's like, it's less about like selling things and more about transforming people's lives, right? And then, yeah, and what you said about civil servants and making them tech savvy, I think that's really transformational. And I think, yeah, that's something that people would buy in a lot more than if you just sell them a product.
Exactly. You got it.
So like you seem to have quite a lot of like marketing expertise from what I hear. Do you have any tips for our audience? What's the first thing they should be doing about marketing if they're starting with a startup?
There's a good book called Obviously Awesome. You should definitely read that. It's by April Dunford. And the most important thing is, so there's actually 2 books. So that's the first one. And why that book is actually pretty good is it's about positioning and messaging. Many people don't do right is A, what this problem is this solving? B, what are the alternatives and how you're different, right? Many people say things like, I'm building Lumos to manage access for applications. It's okay, that's what you do. What problem is it solving? And how is it different from alternatives, right? That's the 2 things. And obviously awesome, where you start with problem solution, but also differentiation against the market, right? So it's the same thing in terms of things are getting commoditized more and more. So the question is, why are you buying a Tesla? Not because it can drive, right? Volkswagen can drive and a Mercedes can drive, right? There's something different about it. Being different, not better. That's the second learning. You don't think about how you can be better than X. It's saying we are Uber, but better for X. You're just like, you're positioning yourself against something that's already there. So how you different, be different, not better, is always another principle I would use. There's another book when it comes to that, it's called Category Pirates. I think it's How to Be Different, Not Better, something like that, which is all around movement building and how you can create a category. So those are the 2 things. I think what's your category creation, like how you're different, right? That's number 1 that people need to learn about. And number 2 is like how to position you well against alternatives, not how to just like your product on what it does, but what problem it solves differently from competitors. That's kind of second marketing, I think, a skill that needs to be honed.
Definitely. And so success often comes with its share of setbacks. Can you share a moment of setback or doubt and how that played a crucial role in Lumos' journey or your personal growth?
Has setbacks, honestly, there's setbacks all the time. You want to close a candidate and convince them that this is their journey, and then they take another one, and you ask yourself, like, man, how is it? Or if an employee is leaving, and you say, like, man, I hope that this would be like the best journey for you even longer, even if your circumstances changed. Or if a customer suddenly says, hey, we don't see the value anymore, it hurts. So whenever something is taken away from you, whether it's like a customer and like an employee leaving, someone not joining, the company feeling a certain way, right? It's literally a setback every time. What I think though is, what's very important in general is, so I'm an optimist by nature. So there's always something to learn. But the question is not just what are you going to learn? Like people say, learn from your failures. There's always something to be learned. Question is also how you're going to build systems around it. I think people say, okay, I learned X, but what system are you building to prevent yourself? So here's an example. So at one time we were like, hey, we don't even know what our values are, right? That was a learning. People were not like, the learning was, we had a survey and people were not really bought into the values anymore. So, okay, we should have talked more about the values, right? We need to talk more about values. Sure, right? That's so simple to say. What is the system that you're building? So the system that we built was that we have like a career ladder, early employee and junior employee. This is what it means to be a junior employee. This is what it means to be a mid-level employee. This is what it means to be a senior employee. And the characteristics were all tied to our values. So for example, one of our values, care genuinely. Care genuinely means, hey, you're there for your team member and you hold their back. You're there for them and protect them. Then for each ladder in the career, for each step in the career ladder, there was like a more advanced version of what care genuinely means. Maybe for the third ladder, it's all about, hey, you seek someone out and help them proactively on something, right? And they can tell you like, hey, without this person, I wouldn't have made it, right? So we systematized values in terms of how we measure performance. And this is how we learn from our mistake of not talking too much about values. So we build a system, prevent that from happening moving forward. So that's how I think about setbacks. Like, how big is the setback? Should the setback happen again? If not, what systems are you building to prevent it from happening again?
I really like that because I think like learning from your mistakes is just so commonly said. People say it often because they make the same mistake again, right? And then they have to learn again. But by building systems around these setbacks and implementing it company-wide like you did, I think this is a way more effective strategy.
Yeah, for example, a system in personal life can be, man, I again didn't go to the gym. Okay. All right. So what system am I doing? Okay. When I go to work, I'm actually putting my gym shoes on. That's number one system, right? So that I'm already ready to go with the gym shoes into the gym right away. That's like a silly small system that you could build, right? So that, yeah, that's just also, you can apply this to personal life as well.
Yeah, definitely. So it's like an environmental system.
That's an environmental system. Exactly.
So despite your busy schedule revolutionizing access management, what hobbies or passions do you pursue outside of work? And how do they influence your creative thinking and well-being?
No, good question. So what I really love is I love, similar to what we talk about stories, creating stories at work. Just love reading good stories or hearing great stories. So I'm just like reading a ton of books, especially fantasy books. I love fantasy books. Recently, I've also gotten into a little bit just like normal fiction. That's something I really get passionate about. So a couple of good books I recently read is The Immortal Man. If anyone wants to read that, it's about like a person that's immortal and like how he struggles through that. There's a book called the Stormlight Archive. It's an amazing fantasy book that I would recommend. And then also for International Women's Day, I read Lessons in Chemistry. Awesome book about female empowerment. So that's another one. So I really love reading stories and learning from people on that side. So that's the main thing that I love to do, next to laughing a lot with friends. Laughter is the fuel for the week. So that's the second thing.
I love that. And yeah, I think it very much shows how your hobbies help a lot in your professional life as well, because the fact that you love stories and also you're telling stories right now. And I can tell that like you're very good at it. And especially with when you talked about how creating movements and all these things and the hero's journey. And yeah, and I just think it's like a great way to relax and also improve your storytelling as well.
No, thank you. I appreciate it.
So looking ahead, where do you see Lumos in the next 5 years? And how do you envision it continuing to reshape the way companies manage access and compliance?
Yeah. So what Lumos will be like similar to what you have on your iPhone. You have the App Store on your iPhone to download any type of app that you want. Lumos will be the App Store for companies where you can purchase any app, get access to any app, manage all your subscriptions, and make sure that anything that's on your company is safe and secure from an access perspective. So we want to be the central infrastructure that defines the relationship between apps and humans. And at some point, hopefully, everyone will manage all the apps through Lumos and will be a public company and serve a ton of good people. I think that's the thing. The big vision is like, how can we really achieve the thing that Apple did for iTunes, with the App Store? How can we do that for consumers? How can we do that for companies?
That's an excellent vision. So that means that in the future, if someone's like creating a SaaS that's like a B2B SaaS, they have to make sure they're on Lumos in the same way that someone who's making a game wants to be an app store.
Exactly. 100%.
Excellent. So finally, what advice would you give to aspiring entrepreneurs who dream of making a similar impact in the tech world, especially those at the cusp of making life-changing decisions for their startups?
Yeah, honestly, advice, everyone has opinions. The main thing that, who am I to give advice? But the main thing that really helped me in my mission, going back to the beginning of this podcast, is screw it, just do it. If you think about a big decision that you need to make, really take a step back and think about how can you add 20% more risk to it? How can you 10x that? Ridicule it. Like, for example, am I going to drop out of Stanford? No, I'm not just going to drop out of Stanford. I'm gonna give them a donation that I was able to be there for. Like, I'm not going to do that, but don't you say 10x the decision? Or hey, I want to start a company. I'm not just going to start a company. I'm going to travel around the world and do it by flying across the globe. Like, you shouldn't do that. But like, how can you just 10x and ridicule it a little bit to make it a little less serious and add also a little bit more risk appetite to your decision making? I think that's something that really helped me in my life so far with starting any company. It started with the government tech company. I just emailed Chancellor Merkel's right hand, who replied then. Or it also started with, I started a company in East Africa, and I had a friend there and I just flew there without just taking flights and went there, right? And so that's my advice. Advice sounds so silly, but that's something that helped me in life. It's just courageous do it, like adding risks to every decision I make.
I really like that. So it's like bold, decisive decisions and taking risks. But would you also say that you have some kind of calculation before you've taken the risk? What calculation would you be making?
Yeah, that's a good question. It depends on the situation. I just think that in life, we're so risk averse sometimes. Think about your life as a book. And let's say do it for the plot, right? Well, in the end, you want to look back on your plot 50 years ago and say, freaking hell, this was a great turn of events, right? And that's how I think about it. Do it for the plot.
Excellent. So thank you so much for joining this podcast today and giving all this excellent advice. And yeah, and I can't wait to continue to see Lumos grow and see you guys like become a public company and become the app store for companies that everyone uses.
Thanks so much, Benita. I appreciate it.